The desert wind moved like a restless spirit across the red earth, lifting dust into the golden light of the setting sun. Ethan had been riding since dawn, chasing cattle that had scattered after a sudden storm. He hadn't meant to cross into Apache land, but the desert had a way of swallowing trails and twisting direction. By the time he realized he was lost, the sky was already burning orange. His horse slowed near a quiet river bend. The air felt different here, still, watchful. Then he felt it. Eyes on him. Before he could reach for his rifle, a voice cut through the silence. "You are far from where you belong, cowboy." Ethan turned slowly. She stood several steps away, bow raised with steady hands. Her dark hair fell over her shoulders, stirred by the wind. There was strength in her posture, pride in her expression, and something unreadable in her gaze. "I reckon I am," he admitted calmly, lifting his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. She didn't lower her weapon. She studied him carefully, searching his face for deception. Most settlers she had seen carried fear or hatred in their eyes. This one carried neither. Just exhaustion, and honesty. "You crossed into Apache land," she said. "Wasn't my intention," he replied. "Storm threw me off course." Silence stretched between them. The river trickled softly, the only sound besides the wind. Her name was Ayanna. She did not offer it at first, but he learned it later from whispered voices near the edge of camp. She was the daughter of a respected warrior, known for her sharp aim and sharper will. Ethan expected to be driven away immediately. Instead, she escorted him to the edge of the territory, watching him the entire time. He thanked her before riding off, but something about the encounter stayed with him. The next day, he returned. Not boldly. Not foolishly. He stopped near the border and began repairing a broken fence line that had clearly suffered from wandering cattle. It was quiet work, deliberate. He felt her presence again before he saw her. "You should not come back," she said, stepping from the trees. "Probably not," he agreed. "But I figured fixing what my cattle broke was the right thing to do." Her eyes narrowed slightly. He wasn't what she expected. He didn't demand. He didn't threaten. He simply acted. Days passed like that, brief conversations, guarded glances, tension building like summer heat before lightning strikes. Neither spoke of it, yet both felt it. Until one evening by the river, when the weight of silence became too heavy. She stepped close, her voice no longer steady. "I can't take it anymore," she whispered. "I want to do it here and now." Ethan's heart pounded. She wasn't speaking of recklessness. She was speaking of truth. And neither of them could pretend any longer. Confession, as if the desert itself had paused to listen. Ethan searched her face, trying to understand the depth behind her words. The river moved gently beside them, reflecting the fading light of dusk, but inside him nothing was calm. "Do what?" he asked quietly, though he already sensed the answer. "Stop hiding," Ayanna replied, her voice unsteady but strong. "Stop pretending we do not feel what is already here." He swallowed. For days they had circled each other like cautious flames, careful not to burn too close. Every glance had lingered too long. Every conversation had ended too soon. The space between their worlds was wide, carved by years of distrust and violence, yet somehow the space between them felt smaller each day. "You know what this means," Ethan said. "If anyone sees us like this." "They already suspect," she interrupted. "My people notice everything. So do yours." He removed his hat, running a hand through his hair, frustration flickering across his face. "Your tribe thinks I'm the enemy. The town thinks you are. There's no easy road here." Ayanna stepped closer, her eyes shining with fierce emotion. "Since when has the desert offered easy roads?" He almost smiled at that. She was fire, proud, unyielding, impossible to ignore. And he realized the truth he had been fighting, leaving would not silence this feeling. It would only haunt him. "What are you asking for?" he said. "I am asking you to choose," she answered. "Choose truth instead of fear." The wind picked up, lifting strands of her dark hair across her face. Without thinking, he reached out and gently brushed them aside. The touch was brief, but it carried more meaning than words. "I don't want to cause trouble for you," he murmured. "You already have," she said softly. "But not the kind you think." Her hand found his, warm and steady. This time neither pulled away. Above them, the first stars began to appear. The desert night stretched wide and endless, a silent witness to their decision. They both knew the cost would be high. Loyalty to family, to tribe, to town, these were not small things to gamble. But the feeling between them had grown too powerful to deny. "I will not run," Ethan said finally. Ayana's lips curved faintly, relief flickering in her eyes. "Good," she replied. "Because I do not run either." And beneath the rising moon, they chose each other, not out of impulse, but out of courage. Rumors travel faster than horses on open land, and it did not take long for whispers to grow teeth. Ethan noticed the change first in town, the way conversation stopped when he entered the saloon, the way men who once clapped his shoulder now watched him with narrowed eyes. Someone had seen him near Apache territory too many times. Someone had begun asking questions. On the other side of the desert, Ayana felt it as well. Her father's gaze lingered longer than usual. The elders spoke in low voices when she approached. Warriors volunteered to patrol the border more often. Nothing was said directly, but suspicion hung thick in the air. The breaking point came at dawn. Ayana overheard two young hunters speaking urgently. A group of settlers had armed themselves and were riding toward Apache land. They believed Ethan had been taken prisoner. They believed they were coming to rescue him. Her heart dropped. Rescue meant gunfire. Gunfire meant blood. She ran. The desert seemed endless as she raced toward the river bend where Ethan often waited. When she found him, he was saddling his horse, sensing trouble in the wind. "You must leave," she said breathlessly. "Your people are coming. They think you are captive." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I told them I could handle myself." "They do not trust what they do not understand," she replied sharply. "If they cross the border with weapons, my tribe will respond." In the distance, faint thunder echoed, not from the sky, but from hooves striking hard ground. Ethan looked toward the horizon, then back at her. "If I ride back now, they'll think I've betrayed them." "And if you stay?" she challenged. "They will think I have betrayed mine." The sound grew louder. Dust clouds rose against the morning light. For a moment, fear flickered between them, not fear for themselves, but for what their connection might destroy. "I'm not leaving you to face this alone," Ethan said firmly. "And I am not hiding behind you," Ayana answered. They rode together toward the approaching riders, not as enemies standing apart, but as two people refusing to be divided. When the settlers arrived, weapons raised, they found Ethan beside an Apache warrior, not bound, not threatened. Confusion rippled through the armed men. "He's not captive," someone muttered. Before anger could ignite, Apache warriors emerged from the hills, bows drawn but steady. The desert held its breath. Ethan stepped forward, placing himself between both sides. "Nobody's been taken," he called out. "Nobody needs saving." It was a fragile moment, balanced on a blade's edge. And in that tense silence, the truth was undeniable. Their bond had forced both worlds to confront something deeper than fear. The silence after the standoff felt heavier than the confrontation itself. For a long moment, no one moved. The settlers sat stiffly on their horses, dust settling around them, eyes shifting between Ethan and the Apache warriors emerging from the hills. Bows were drawn but not released. Rifles were raised but not fired. The desert wind swept through the space between both sides, as if daring someone to make the first mistake. Ethan stepped forward slowly, lowering his weapon to the ground. The simple gesture carried weight. "There's no kidnapping," he said firmly. "No attack. I came here on my own." Murmurs spread among the settlers. One of the older men, Thomas Reed, narrowed his eyes. "You expect us to believe that?" he called out. "You've been disappearing for days." "I was fixing what our cattle damaged," Ethan replied. "And I stayed because I chose to." The word chose seemed to hang in the air. Ayanna stood tall beside him, her chin lifted with quiet defiance. She could feel her father's presence somewhere behind her in the hills, watching. Judging. Measuring the cowboy's courage. "This land does not belong to fear," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the open space. "It belongs to those who respect it." Another long pause followed. The tension was fragile, like thin ice over deep water. Thomas finally lowered his rifle slightly. "You're risking a lot, boy," he muttered. Ethan didn't look away. "Maybe it's time someone did." Behind him, one by one, the Apache warriors eased their bows. Not fully lowered, but enough to signal restraint. It wasn't trust yet. It was something smaller, more cautious, a crack in a wall that had stood too long. After several uneasy minutes, the settlers turned their horses. No apology was spoken, but neither was a threat. They rode back toward town, leaving behind a silence filled with possibility. As the dust faded, Ayanna released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The danger had passed, but the weight of what they had done remained. Later that evening, she returned to the river where everything had begun. The sky glowed with deep shades of amber and violet. Ethan approached quietly, stopping beside her. "I said I couldn't take it anymore," she reminded him softly. He nodded. "And now?" She turned to face him, strength steady in her eyes. "Now we stop hiding. We face whatever comes." He reached for her hand, this time without hesitation. No secrecy. No shadows. Here and now, they chose courage over fear, and each other over division.